So today, my friend Tracey Mitchell is joining us, and I'm so glad you're here. Tell us just a little bit about yourself, what life is like in Dallas, and who you spend your days with, and what you spend them doing.
Oh man, it's so awesome to be with you. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this conversation. My husband and I, we live in North Dallas, and we consider it our forever home. We absolutely love it. We love water skiing, outdoors, mountain biking, hiking, all the fun things.
I love that. I love that. I've only been water skiing once, and I was able to get up like on my third try, but then they never told me how to actually move. And so I thought, well, maybe it's like snow skiing and you just transfer your weight from one foot to the other. It's not. So
The
I
opposite.
stayed on one side of the boat the whole time, but I still had a blast. But yeah,
Yeah.
so fun. So fun. And Tracey, in the first time hearing you speak, I think it was back in the spring in Nashville. And I just thought, okay, here we go. This is going to be good, like just in the first minute. And so you just command the stage so well and you captivate your audience. And I know you do this all the time. You speak with men, women, entrepreneurs, even homeless, right?
Yes. No,
And
I've been traveling about I don't know, 24, 25 years to travel about 45 weeks a year across continental, and it's simply by God's grace. I tell people I'm doing everything now that I never planned on doing ever in my life. So it's supernatural, it's full of grace. I love every moment. It pushes me outside of every box that is ever in my personality. I'm an introvert that has to be an extrovert. And so yeah, it's an exciting life for sure.
yeah. Well, and like you said, just never expected to be there. And so I really want you to just kind of pull the curtain back for us and just tell us, how did all this begin?
Oh yeah, I'm still trying to figure out those pieces. So yeah, I had no aspirations, very introverted, filled with rejection, had no aspirations of ever doing anything in the public light. And I guess I don't know, I was in my early 20s and just felt that God was leading me to host just a small little Bible study. I have to be honest, I almost backed on that. I was scared out of my mind, wanted to cancel it, not do it. We started with about just 20 at a local church in the back room. And that evolved. And then just piece by piece of this crazy story that I just began to get invitations to travel and speak, and then to write books and to create films and to do all of the things. And again, never in my wheelhouse, never in my level of expertise, defied the odds. And again, just following God day by day.
Mhm. I love that. And I think there's so many that are leaning in, especially this time of year. I still have the tree up, but it's January and we are making resolutions and just ways that we can improve ourselves and what we want to change, how we want to grow in this next year. And I think there's things that are on our hearts that we're just like, that is out of my comfort zone. I don't know if I could ever do that. And so they're just leaning in, listening to hear more about you and how you've done this. And I believe with every step you took, it was a step of courage. And
Yeah.
so can you just tell us a little bit more of how this journey has shaped your book, Becoming Brave?
Sure. Again, going back to the fact that I'm doing things number one, let's just say I didn't feel qualified to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think now I'm on the other end of what some would say a successful career in writing, a successful career. I hate to use that term, but it is in public speaking. And now it's like I'm doing it in reverse. So I'm going back to school, going back to get other degrees and a master's degree in journalism, and just doing that model backwards. And so when I'm asked that question, how did you get to where you are, or what is your next 5-year plan? It's hard to explain that because, again, it's that day by day following God. I meet so many, especially young to middle-aged women who have a specific track that they're trying to go. They have different things that they're wanting to accomplish. They get halfway through that cycle and wake up and go, oh my gosh, this wasn't what I was created to do. Now what? How do I back out of this thing and get back or get on this path that I never expected and had never even explored? And so in Becoming Brave, I teach women how to become what brave, how to become courageous, how to be this woman that is moxie and audacious, because I don't think women ever just wake up one day and just go, oh, I want to be brave today. No, most women become brave because they're forced into circumstances where they had no choice and no option but to be brave. And so I think bravery is an evolution of going, okay, this isn't what I planned. This isn't what I look like. This isn't what I imagined. I never envisioned this. How in the world am I doing these things? And so again, just following step by step, trying to keep pace with what God is inviting us to do, exploring the creative side of us. Most women think that they have to either be analytical or highly creative, or that we have to substitute or choose, pick and choose. I started out being very analytical, very type A, very driven, still am. And I thought there was no room ever for me to evolve into a creative space. And then again, these opportunities came that were in the creative lane. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm not creative. I can't write. I can't develop. I can't create content. And the Holy Spirit is just like, if you will just follow me, I will show you facets of yourself, dimensions of yourself that you don't even know that's buried within you.
I love that. And it's so true that we don't necessarily wake up saying, I need to be brave, but it's forced upon us because of these circumstances. Like I can think about so many people in my life and my own story too, where you don't realize that you can make it until you have to. Yes. And I think sometimes we even catch ourselves saying that of like, oh, I could never imagine what that's like to go through it. And it's because we don't have the grace to go through it. Like when you are faced with this circumstance, you're also given this supernatural grace to help you through it and to kind of, nudge you along into brave steps, even when your legs are shaking and terrified. And so I'm curious, just from your perspective, what holds us back? What keeps us from being brave?
Oh, I would say bumping 100%. It's the fear of rejection. One of the first books I ever wrote was on the topic of rejection, and I did it fearful and afraid. I think at the root of why we're not braver in certain areas, it's not because we don't feel like we have the answers or something to bring to the table. It's we fear what the impression that others will have for us if we do. And so, for years, I knew that I had the answers to be a public speaker. I knew that God had given me things that needed to be said. But I feared if I stepped forward, how would others receive me, or would they receive me? Yeah. And so I think there's this chronic anxiety, this internalization. It's not that we don't feel like we have the skill set in certain areas, but will they accept? What will the world think of this? What will my neighbor think of this? What about my children, my family? And so we cross-analyze ourselves into a place of immobility, and we begin to internally doubt our own worth. And so I tell people that every issue we have in life, every single issue, whether it's a sin issue, a confidence issue, everything we have goes back to an identity issue. And until we solve that identity issue, our other problems won't be solved. And so we can finger trace that back. Whatever issue that we're facing today, whatever hardship, whatever confusion, whatever doubt, that self-internalization goes back to an identity crisis. And so in Becoming Brave, we really address that, our core identity head on.
But I feel like you're preaching right to me, because something I've been just personally walking through is recognizing how the areas that I'm struggling in, it's because it's a lack of trust. Like it can all be brought back. And I see how even that is rooted in an identity crisis. Like if I really know who I am in Christ, then that trust is there, and that's really, really cool.
Well, the subtitle of Becoming Brave is how to think big, dream wildly, and live fear-free. And I'm going to say that again. It's how to think big, dream wildly, and live fear-free. And I put it in that sequential order on purpose because society has told us marginally, that before we do anything, before we can think big or have these audacious dreams, that we have to eradicate fear. And I've discovered that that is totally not the case. It's totally not true. It's usually when we start to think big or bigger, and we start to have these wild dreams, that if we'll just begin to follow that flow, to begin to think at least a little bit bigger than we thought yesterday, to dream just a little bit more audacious than we dreamed yesterday, that by following that, it begins to eradicate and erode those fears. And so perfectly packaged, we don't have to have it all together. We don't have to do things to where and saying, oh, I'm not going to take a leap of faith until I get rid of my fear. That'll never happen. You know, I talked to a #1 best-selling author. Like, she is just fabulous on every level. And we were talking to her, I don't know, it was maybe like her, I don't know, 8th, 9th, 10th book came out, always a bestseller. And we said, hey, are you excited about the book that's coming out? And she said, not really. I'm afraid. We go, what? Is this a joke? Like, what are you afraid of? You're like 8-time bestseller. And she said, internally, she said, if I own up to these feelings, she said, I'm afraid that at some point that my books will stop being bestsellers, you know, because the expectation, the bar is set so high. And so I really gave that some thought. If we're not careful in our 20s, we're fearful because we don't know what we're doing yet. In our 30s, we're fearful because we're just beginning and we're not at the top of our game, right? There are people that can do it better, faster, smarter, sharper. In our 40s, we start to fear, okay, now I'm bumping 50. Am I past my prime? You know, you get towards 60 and you're like, oh, are my best days over? Am I going to become invisible for the younger crowd? And so if we're not careful, we'll waste all of our years in this vicious cycle of, am I not good enough? You know, am I, what's wrong with me? And we internalize fears to the point, again, that it makes us immobile. And at some point we have to stop that.
Yeah. And just like you said before, that am I good enough? That is rooted in identity and who we are. Yeah.
And so becoming brave, we use a lot of just core text examples. I'm really big on storytelling, you know, from the neighbor next door all the way to household famous. And so we unpack this in a way that they intellectually walk away with tools, right? So they're equipped on how to live a brave life. They're emotionally challenged on living a brave life. And then there's a lot of inspiration. So we mix truth and inspiration and storytelling. And I think it's just a great, solid read for women who want to enlarge the space that they're in and maybe don't know how, or maybe they're stuck in a cycle of like, okay, what's next? How do I evolve beyond the person that I am today?
Well, and speaking of the stories you tell, I was captivated by one. In your book, you start with a story about your friend Beth. And you say, I'm going to read this because I don't want to misquote you. You say, God is looking for more Beths. She rose, disguised in leggings and hoodies rather than tights and capes. Wonder women who care more about their sisters than about themselves. The greatest moments in life are when we have the courage to ignore our own needs and instead reach out to the hurting around us. So I'd love for you to expand on this and what has this looked like in your life and what can it look like in our lives? And how can we stand up as the sheroes and the heroes in our everyday lives?
I really leaned in and I started with the story about my friend. Her name is not actually Beth, but to protect her family, I modified her name, but she was a great friend. And I started off a book on being filled with being brave and being courageous with my friend who actually passes away from cancer. And I did that intentionally because I wanted people to see that even when the odds are stacked against us, and our story doesn't end exactly like we thought it should, or perhaps we thought we deserved that it should, that Beth was one of the most inspiring and brave women I ever knew, because in the spite of difficulties, in the face of adversity, she chose. That's a strong word for me. She made the decision to get up every day and face insurmountable odds that were stacked against her with a smile on her face and hope in her heart. And she showed other women around her how to be brave in spite of those difficult moments. And so I don't look at women who have it all together and say, oh, that's the model for bravery. Or women who do astronomical, unimaginable feats and are famous and go, okay, that's the typology, that's the model. No, a lot of times it's a woman literally who is a single mom of 4 children, or who is